Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Failures to Fortunes podcast, the show where we fearlessly dive into the untold stories of real estate investors' greatest setbacks and how they turned those failures into resounding successes. I'm your host, Kate Berry, and we're talking with real estate investors across the country to learn exactly how and why they failed, and how they took that failure and turned it into a powerful lesson for their business. So come along with me, Kate Berry, on this transformative journey from failure to fortune. I invite you to join our supportive community where together we can inspire, educate, and motivate each other to achieve all of our real estate investing goals. Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Failures to Fortunes podcast. I'm your host, Kate Berry, and on this show, we dive deep into the journeys of real estate investors and agents who have experienced failures, but are willing to share the lessons learned that help them turn those failures into fortunes. We are thrilled to be here today with our guest, Annie Dickerson. She is a real estate investing expert with over a decade of experience, also co-founder of Good Egg Investments with her partner, Julie Lamb. Their firm has facilitated over $1.4 billion in commercial real estate investments, impacting countless investors nationwide. Annie and Julie are renowned authors, hosts of the Life and Money Show podcast, and creators of the esteemed Real Estate Accelerator Mentorship program. So guiding individuals in raising private capital for their real estate ventures. Annie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I couldn't be more excited to be here with you and your listeners, Kate.
You've got such a wealth of information. I love that you have your own podcast and a mentorship program. You seem to me like a person that is willing to share resources and knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And it started all through growing up. I always wanted to be a teacher. I was the kid, I'm an only child, but I would sit in my room with all my stuffed animals lined up, and I would be the teacher in the front of the room, and I would be reading them books and teaching them things. And I know a lot of kids want to be teachers when they're younger, but it was something that was deep within me. And so after college, that was actually the first job that I had. I joined Teach for America, and I went to go teach fourth grade in a high crime, high poverty neighborhood. And it was tough. It was really tough, heartbreaking at times, but really important work to try and close the opportunity gap to make sure that every child has access to a great education. And so it was always in me, that seed of wanting to teach, wanting to share, trying to learn it myself, and then giving back in some way. Real estate was never on my radar. It was like the farthest. Real estate and business, ick. I was like, no, thank you. I am like focused on this teaching thing. Thank you very much. Actually, I went from teaching to game design because I went to create educational games.
Oh, very
And
cool.
then from game design to instructional design, creating trainings for companies. So all along, here's where the real estate does come in. When you're a teacher, I remember the first paycheck I ever got as a teacher. It was the second week after teaching, and tough. Like I would stay up late into the night planning the lessons for the next day. It was a round the clock job.
Right.
And I was so tired by the end of the second week, but I was so excited because it was my first paycheck. I go into the office, I go into my little cubby, I get the little slip of paper, I tear it open, and I look at the number and I'm like, where did all the money go? And I was like, this is it? I think it was just barely over $1,000 for 2 weeks of work. And I was like, how can I survive on this? And I didn't know the answer to that at that moment, but I was like, I need to figure this out because right now I may not love teaching right now because I haven't gotten into the groove of it yet. But let's say I fall in love with this. I want to be able to build a life out of this.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know it at the time, but the universe was kind of like, here you go. Here's a little answer for you. Because in the background, my husband and I, we had gotten married right out of college. And so we were following all the steps. We were like, okay, get married. Check. Next on the list, buy a house. Okay, let's go buy a house. And we were living in Washington, D.C. at the time. And we said, okay, let's go buy, we were in our 20s. We said, let's go buy a condo or a loft, something really cool and
Sure, right.
trendy.
DuPont Circle, right?
That's right. Exactly. And so we started looking down that path, but fortunately, we had a really great mentor in our real estate agent. And he told us, these condos and lofts are neat, but you might want something a little bit more practical. And he said,
Mhm.
in DC, there's a lot of these row homes, and a lot of those row homes have not just one unit, but they have two.
Yep.
So he said you could live in one unit and you could rent out the other. And this was before anybody was calling it house hacking, before it
Right.
became a thing.
Wow.
But because we were in our early 20s, fresh out of college, we were used to the dormitory concept and
Mhm.
living with people. And so we were totally fine with that. And then he said the magic words. He said, if you buy a duplex like this and you rent it out, and over time, maybe you move out and you rent out both units, if you play your cards right, someday you might get that property to be cash flow positive. And I had never grown up around real estate investors, around entrepreneurs, business owners. So I had never heard those words put together
Right.
quite like
Oh my
that
gosh.
before.
Right. It's like
But
a
here I
light bulb
am.
moment, right?
Yeah, it was totally a light bulb moment. And here I am, a struggling teacher on this pithy salary, and I hear the words cash flow positive. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but I was like, oh,
Sounds
I
good.
like the sound of that. I want some of that in
Yes.
my life. Yes.
Cash flow positive. Yes.
Yeah. So we did. That's exactly what we did. We bought our first duplex in a great area of Washington, D.C. In fact, the first Target in the city had just come in about 2 blocks away. So it was what they call the path of progress, right? There was stuff happening
Love
in that
that.
neighborhood.
Hmm.
And so we loved it so much. We loved that model so much that we then not only bought that one, but then we bought another duplex the following year. And we said, this is going to be our thing. We'll just keep doing this every year,
Right.
every couple of years. And we started naming them after letters of the alphabet so we could start our collection. So we had Alpha, then Bravo. And then when we moved to the Bay Area in California, where we are now, then we had Charlie and
Wow.
Delta.
Yep.
And our goal was to just get all the way to Zulu. And I thought this is great because no matter how many jobs I have or what I decide to do in my career, how much I make, even if I don't work, this will be a separate stream of income
Yep.
for us. I
Yep.
never thought that it would fully replace my income. I just thought it would be a nice supplement
Yep.
on the side. Later, I had that aha moment where it
Yeah.
could actually replace my salary, but we'll get to that. So then we were collecting these properties, but then life happens, right? And so we were in the Bay Area, we were on Delta, number four, fourth duplex. But by this time we had two kids
Hmm.
and we were living in the very expensive Bay Area. And
Hmm.
so when we went to go find Echo, the fifth duplex, suddenly the model didn't work quite the same anymore. We needed to have at least 200,000, if not more, for a down payment.
Right. Because I
And
wanted to ask you,
yeah,
how did you finance these first four deals?
yeah. So the first couple in DC, the first one that was we bought that in 2008,
Mhm.
actually. And so
Oh,
the
wow.
world was crashing. That first one was actually, we bought it out of foreclosure. The basement had previously been a brothel. So there was a lot of sweat equity
Oh my
involved.
gosh.
But we got a really, because of the timing, we got a really unique loan and it was our first one. So the property itself was, I think it was 480,000 was what we paid for it, but our down payment was really low. It was under
Oh,
10%.
wow.
Um,
Amazing.
yeah. So for young 20 somethings, that was the dream. We had so
Yep.
little in,
Mhm.
and we were able to really restore the property, get tenants in there.
Nice.
And so it
Wow.
was a perfect timing. And much like right now, kind of where we are now is things are shifting and a lot of people are running away from real estate. But,
Yes.
as the savvy
Right.
investors say, now is the time to double down. Now is the time to go running toward real estate because this is when the great opportunities are going to come.
Did you have any fear going into that 2008 purchase? Or were you maybe the ignorance is bliss, right? Like didn't really think about
Right.
it too much?
I think more the latter. We were 23 And we didn't know what we didn't know.
And you did
And
the right thing, by the way, but
we did.
so
Oh,
many
yeah.
people were terrified, and
Yes.
the media was saying
Oh, yeah.
all sorts of scary things, and they
Mhm.
were really getting bad. I have so many folks come on this podcast that talk about that time. And so I love that you went for it. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, we had no idea what we were getting into. We were just like, seems to make sense. We didn't have a spreadsheet. We didn't do any analysis. I think we walked the property maybe once or twice with our real estate agent, and that was pretty much it. And
You
we were
had that
like,
great mentor,
okay,
right? He was the one maybe
yeah.
guiding you a little bit and had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
experience. You trusted them. I
Yes.
think that makes a great point too. If you are starting out and very scared, start working with somebody that has been
Yeah.
through cycles, that knows the basics, the foundation, the fundamentals of real estate, that can direct you to a property. And he can say, you trust them. And they're like, this is a good property for you. This is something more practical. Here's how you can do it. Listen to
Yes.
the expert. Don't listen to just all the white noise
Yeah, and I think it's so to stack onto that, I think it's so important to find somebody who's just one or two steps ahead of where you are.
of
You
that.
know, a lot of people go and find the gurus that are 100 steps ahead of where you are. But the thing is, those people were in your shoes decades ago, many, many, many years ago. They might have forgotten, or their knowledge that they got at this point in their journey might now be outdated.
Totally doesn't apply.
So,
Different
yeah,
market, different reality, different sets
exactly.
of challenges that you're working through. I think that's a really valid point. Start working with someone just a couple of years, a year, and
Yep.
in this market, even 6 months ahead, they're
Yeah, that's right.
they may know
That's
a thing
right.
or two.
Exactly.
So let's
Exactly.
go back to your Echo property. So you had a great first, sounds like your first four were great and you're on
Yes.
a roll. You're feeling
Yep.
really good about yourself. You got it's tried and true method. You're getting there. Then what happens?
So by this time, no more first-time homeowner credits, no breaks. We had to go the full 20% down, which was a lot to be able to save up 200 to $300,000 was a lot. It would take a long
Incredible.
time.
Yeah.
And with young kids, oh my gosh, I had no idea how much stuff kids have. Like between the changing table and the toys and the diapers, the diaper bags
Oh
and the
my gosh.
strollers and the car
Yeah.
seats. Oh my gosh, so much stuff. And
Hmm.
I could not fathom moving in the middle of that time.
Right.
And I was
Oh
like, okay,
gosh.
maybe this house hacking thing isn't going to work anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, what are we going to do? I mean, we wanted to continue to invest in real estate because we were seeing some great results, but we said, what do we do? Okay, so this door is closed for now, this house hacking door, but let's see what else we can do. So then we said, okay, what if we invest in just a rental property that we don't live
Mm-hmm.
in the Bay Area?
Yeah.
But then we had to quickly shut that down because A, just as expensive, and B, really restrictive landlord laws. Very
Oh,
risky
wow. Right. Right.
because, tenants, it's hard to evict. It's hard to do anything here in the Bay Area because it's so protective of tenants.
Sure.
And so we're like, okay, this isn't a great market for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, what if we venture a little bit outside of the Bay Area? Maybe we could go as far as, I don't know, Sacramento
Mm-hmm.
or Stockton or somewhere exotic out
Right.
there. But,
Like
and then,
for California,
right?
I'm up here in Vermont, so out of state investing is
Yeah,
like 30, it's literally 20 minutes away. We're out of state, but California is
right.
pretty big, right? So
Oh,
yeah.
it's pretty big.
This
Yeah.
must feel like out of state investing though, if that is far,
Yeah.
not close.
Yeah. So we thought, okay, maybe we could do that, but still prices are still high in Sacramento. It didn't really make much sense either.
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, okay, well, let's just try maybe out of state, totally out of state. And in my mind, it was like in middle school geography class where they have that big map at the
Mm-hmm.
front of the class. And it was like we pulled down a map of the whole United States and we said, okay, well, where should we go?
I think you're still a teacher, right?
Right? Yeah.
I
Yep.
love that.
Exactly. So it was really, I was stuck in this analysis paralysis for a long time. And I was like, where should we go? Should we stay on the West Coast? Kind of, Seattle, Portland, but those were expensive markets
Yep.
too. And then I said, well, if we go east, how far east do we go? And then one day I was just like, you know what? Let me just Google best markets to invest in. But the thing is, every list is a little bit different.
Right.
So then I
Sure.
said, okay,
Sure.
what if I started to just cross-reference these lists? So
Hmm.
that's what I did. I started to cross-reference and I said, okay, there's a few markets that appear on multiple lists. And around this time, I came across a great book by Dave Lindahl called Emerging Real Estate Markets.
Oh, nice.
And so in it, he gave some great guidance around what specifically to look for. And at the time, I knew nothing about what to look for in a market, but he talked about basic things like job growth,
Yep.
population growth, because
Yep.
you want a place where people are moving there for specific and fundamental reasons. And then you want job diversity because you don't want the local economy to be dependent on a single industry, like let's say
Yeah.
the oil industry.
Sure.
Then he went into very nuanced things, and this is where the gold was.
Hmm.
He talked about, you want to find a landlord-friendly area. And specifically, he said, you want to find a place with a physical barrier to growth. And so if you think about like New York, LA, these
Yep.
are markets that have a physical barrier to growth, the ocean,
Right.
right?
You
As
can't develop
as more
more out.
jobs and people come, they
They
can't
can't grow.
build
Right.
into the water.
Mm.
And so that drives real estate demand and real estate prices up. And I thought that makes a lot of sense. But the problem is in the middle of the country, there's not a lot of physical barriers to growth. This is why
Right.
Texas just keeps going and going and
Yes.
going and going.
Arizona. Yeah,
Yep,
absolutely.
exactly. And then I stumbled across a little known market at the time, Huntsville, Alabama. And what was unique about Huntsville, it had great job growth, population growth. It actually has, funny enough, the highest PhDs per capita in the country because they
Wow.
build rockets there. NASA is there.
Oh,
So it's a
right.
fascinating little
Very
market.
fascinating.
And the physical barrier to growth, even though it's a landlocked area, if you look at a map of Huntsville, you'll see this huge swath of land really close to kitty corner to downtown Huntsville,
Yeah.
and it's called the Redstone Arsenal. It's government land. So you can't build homes on that land.
Right.
And I saw that and I looked at the job growth, the population growth, and I thought, oh, things are happening here. This is the path of progress. But I know that it's a certain tipping point. They're not going to be able to build here, and that's going to drive the real estate prices up.
Yep.
And so the funny thing is, though, when you're coming from a market like the Bay Area, and you then look at properties in a place like Huntsville, it
Mhm.
looks like everything's on clearance. I
I'm sure.
I remember
And
talking
property
to,
taxes wise, I'm sure
oh,
too,
oh my
insurance,
gosh.
all the
Yeah, yeah.
all of it.
Everything was so cheap. But here's the danger in that was, and the what I've learned in hindsight is just because the prices are lower doesn't mean everything's a smoking deal. You
Right.
still have to do your due diligence and your analysis because if the real estate purchase prices are lower, it also probably means the rental prices
Of
are
course.
lower
Yep.
too. So it's
Yeah.
not like we could buy a $200,000 fourplex in Huntsville and get San Francisco rental
Right.
rates.
Right.
That would be a dream. So I was like, okay, I called my real estate broker in Huntsville and I was like, give me one of everything you got. These prices are great. I'm going to take all these fourplexes. And so within the span of a few months, we had a small portfolio of 25 units in Huntsville.
Thing.
So this was Echo, Foxtrot, Golf, Hotel. And, we were like, this is so easy. I got this. I did all the things that they said. I got all these properties. And then everything fell apart
Oh my,
all at once.
oh my God. Well, I love the saying, if it was easy, everyone would do it, right?
Yep,
And I
exactly.
think the truth is real estate is never easy, or it can be easy for a while and it can feel great, but things always happen. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad investor. You should just quit and throw in the towel. It means you've got to work through it. So tell us what happened.
Yeah. And I honestly think those moments of failure or those moments where your back is up against the wall, the unexpected happens,
It's
it's
true.
your opportunity. It's the universe in some way saying, okay, now is your opportunity to step up. You said you want this. Okay, well, in order to get that, you have to become this person. And
Yes.
to become
Yes.
this person, you've got to go through
Got to
this
work through this.
challenge.
Yep.
Yeah. And so
Absolutely.
some people at that moment, they'll turn away and then they'll never get to that goal that they want.
Yep.
But for those people who work through it, that's when you're going to get to the other side of that. So
Oh,
that's
I love
exactly
that.
what happened with me. One day, this was when my kids were, I think my older one was 3, the younger one was not yet 1. So I'm
Yeah.
busy and
Really
I'm
young.
working all day long. And we had these properties in Huntsville on the side. And we were working with a property manager. So we had boots on the ground. And one day my property manager calls me out of the blue. And it's never a good sign. They
No,
never
that's
call
never good.
you, they
They're
never
never going to
call you
call
and say,
you.
guess what? The tenant
Right.
paid extra rent today. No, that's never the news they call with. And so I was like, I saw it on my phone. I was like, oh no, this is not good. I was like, okay, maybe it's like a burst water pipe, or maybe it's like the roof, something that's like fixable, some maintenance thing, fine.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I pick up the call and she says, well, you know that tenant that we were going to evict tomorrow? There was this tenant that, and this is something I learned about myself as I invested in real estate, was it took me a long time to treat real estate as a business.
Hmm.
I was trying to do it as almost like somebody who owned a house and was letting my relatives live in it, And so any
Sure.
excuses that my tenants came up with, like I got in a car crash
Yeah.
or my relative came in and they fell on hard times, they needed my money or whatever. I would
Yes.
say, yeah, no
Sure.
problem.
Right.
Give them a little extra time. Give them another month.
Yep.
And so this particular tenant hadn't been paying for several months. In fact, they were not even paying before we acquired the property. And this is another lesson I learned
Hmm.
because with every state, the regulations are different. And in Alabama, it's kind of like it's like an ask me state. You have
Hmm.
to ask the right questions. The owners actually don't have to divulge everything.
Oh,
And
interesting. They
so,
don't have to
right?
disclose
No, they don't
that
have to disclose. Yeah.
wow.
So
So
we
very,
didn't.
very buyer beware, caveat emptor.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not going to know you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right. Yep. And we, being newer out of state investors at the time, we didn't know to ask those questions. So we thought, okay, every unit is occupied,
Hmm.
and here are the rents, here are the leases. Great. And
Right.
we didn't realize that there was this tenant who hadn't been paying for many months, even before we acquired it. And of course, she wasn't paying after we acquired it. So
Right.
finally, I put my foot down and I said, okay, maybe this isn't the right fit.
Hmm.
So my property manager calls where the sheriff was going to show up the next day. And so she says, well, I've got good news and bad news. She says, the good news is that tenant left. And I
Hmm.
said, okay, that's a step in the right direction.
Yep.
And she said, well, the bad news though is before she left, she stopped up all the sinks and the tubs in her unit. She left the water running and then she took off.
Oh
And
my
she said,
gosh.
by the time that anybody knew what was happening, she had flooded not just her unit, but the unit next door to that and the unit next door to that. So 3 of the 4 units in this fourplex were flooded.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Devastating. Were there other tenants living in the other units at this time? Yeah.
Yes, they were all occupied. So I had no idea what to do. Here I had my 2 kids. They were like, Mommy, play with me, play with
Right.
me.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm like, I can't. I have to deal with this sudden disaster that dropped out of the sky into my lap, and I
Yeah.
have to figure out what to
While
do.
you're 1,000 miles away,
Yes.
other time zones.
Hmm.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh.
Yep. And so we had to figure out, I mean, it was great to have my property management company on the ground to deal with the maintenance or the repairs. But, as the owner, I still had to make the decisions and I had to figure out what we were going to do. And I had to work with my insurance company, which was a ton of paperwork. And
Mhm.
so we did have tenants in the other units. And so we had to, this is what I learned later. So we had insurance to be able to cover temporary housing for them.
Mhm.
But the thing is, you don't get that insurance money until after the repairs are complete.
Right.
So we realized we had to shell out this money that I mean, we had some reserves for this property, but a nominal amount,
Yeah.
not the $20,000, $30,000 we suddenly had to come up with for
Wow.
these repairs
Mm.
and for these tenants to have
Right.
temporary housing.
Right.
So it was a
Plus the
shock.
loss of rent, right?
Yep.
You're adding on now, even having 1 month of vacancy in
Yeah.
an apartment can destroy your cash
Yes.
flow for the whole year. So in terms of thinking about real estate investment rental properties, of course you think about the cash flow month to month and the long-term appreciation. Then you have those yearly expenses too. And so you get a big hit at once that knocks out 3 units. I mean, it's a
Hmm.
big hit. That's a lot to take. That's a tough phone call.
Yeah, and this was summer, humid summer in Huntsville, Alabama. I had never dealt with water damage of that magnitude before.
Mhm.
So I kept calling my property manager. I said, "Is it done? Is it done? Is it done?" And she said, "No, honey."
Oh
No,
my
honey, it's not
gosh.
done. She said, "We got to run the fans." She's like, "We've been running the fans 24/7." They had to dry that place out for
Right. Of
weeks
course, before they
before
can
they
fix
could
it.
even
Yeah.
start on the remediation and to fix it. I
Wow.
had no idea. I thought, okay, we'll get the water out,
Mhm.
and by
Yep.
next week, we'll be able to start on the repairs. A couple weeks in, we'll get the tenants back in, we'll get that new one rented out. It'll be
Yep.
fine. But this was the entire summer. I was on the phone with property manager
Oh
and
my gosh.
insurance, and it was a nightmare. And at the end of that, or even as I was going through that, I was like, okay, never again.
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, we closed the door on house hacking with duplexes. Now we're going to have to close the door on out of state rentals because I do not want to live a life where at any moment something
Right. You
like
get a
this could
call like
drop into my life.
that.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. Right. Oh my gosh. My heart sank. My stomach sank too when you said you're getting that call. I feel like I've been there before. Many of the people that have been on our show have been there before, and it really can be a defining moment that can knock you out of the game forever, or like you said, it's the opportunity to grow. So when you got through that, and what was it that kept driving you to stay in real estate? And how did you take what happened there and turn it into where you are now?
so at the time, I thought that investing actively in either these house hack duplexes or these rental properties was the only way to invest in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that there were all these other ways. And what was my saving grace was that during this time when I was investing in all these rental properties, I became obsessed with it. I
Yeah.
loved every aspect of it. And every time we'd get together with friends and family, it was all I could talk about. And so very quickly, everybody else was like, "Hey, teach me to do that. I want to do that too." And I said, "Yeah, no problem. Pull up a chair. Here's the teacher in me," right? I'm like, "Okay,
Yes.
step
Yes.
one, do this. Step two, do this." I start teaching them, but inevitably their eyes would glaze over and they'd say, "Oh, no, no, no. I don't want to do all that hard work. I have a little bit of cash.
Right.
I want to put it into real estate,
Uh-huh.
but could you just put it in with the next property that you do? Maybe you do the work, I'll put the money in." And at the time I knew nothing about that. And I said, "Oh, I wish I could help you, but that's not what I do. So good
Right.
luck."
And it
But
also
I
it
had,
sounds kind of like we always hear about real estate kind of scams or people,
totally,
you're
yeah,
like, oh, that sounds. I mean, when I first started learning about syndications, I was like, wait, isn't this what I've always been warned about? Like, don't
yes,
do this,
yes,
So
yeah,
you maybe feel like I'm not smart enough or experienced enough to
yep.
think take other people's money and put it into a proper investment. So you've got those kind
Exactly.
of blocks in your
Yeah.
mental blocks to work
Yeah.
through to get to that other
Absolutely.
side. But, it absolutely is very valid and a great way to buy real estate and invest in real estate.
Yeah. So that's what I ultimately discovered was after I had enough of these conversations, I realized, wait a second, I know all these people with the same problem. If
Mhm.
I could just help them solve this problem, I can help a lot of people.
Yes.
And so that's when I started digging and I discovered syndications. And same, I had never heard that term before. I'd been investing in real estate for over 10 years at that point. And I had never known that there was this easy button for real estate, so to speak, where I could just be in the passenger seat and somebody else could do all the heavy lifting.
Yep.
And my first thought was I was enraged. I was like, what do you mean there's this whole other way to invest in real estate and nobody told me? It was like, what? I could have been doing this the whole time. And that was my first thought. And then as I dug more into it, I realized two things. One is, with the disaster in Huntsville, I was like, okay, well, we're not going to keep investing in these rental properties. So this passive investing thing, this might be a better fit for me at this phase in my life with young
Yep.
kids and other things to focus on. And so I tried it out. And then I said, this is amazing. Why don't more people know about this? And so then I said, okay, I've got to shout this from the rooftops, especially when I discovered that syndications used to be country club investments where you had to know somebody
Right.
who was involved in a
A lot of
syndication. And
gatekeeping. Real
usually,
estate has a
yeah,
history of a long
exactly.
history of gatekeeping, and especially not being able to have shared equity in communities. And there's been a lot of the old boys club, right? So
Hmm.
I love when I talk with folks about this, because about breaking down these barriers, sharing this information, making it more accessible to everyone, because
Yeah.
everyone should be involved.
Yes. And that's probably why everybody thought it was a scam. Because if you had a great secret like that, wouldn't you tell everybody, oh no, this thing that I'm doing, this is a scam. Don't touch this. You don't want any part of
Right,
this. Right.
exactly. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Wink, wink. But,
Wow.
that's really, and it was really, again, that teacher in me that, because like you said, I was so intimidated by the thought of taking responsibility for other people's money. And I thought, "Oh, I don't know. Can I do this? Should I do this?" But then I thought, okay, maybe I should just try it. So I had this opportunity to be part of somebody else's deal and to
Mhm.
just try to raise capital. I was very resistant at first, but I said, okay,
Yeah.
I'll give it a try. And as soon as I started, I realized that raising capital and talking to investors is all about teaching. It's just
Yeah.
teaching people
Oh, I
how
love
this
that.
works. And so I fell completely head over heels in love with it because it was taking this secret to building wealth and creating a life by design and taking this experience that I had and being able to teach it to people and share it with people, this black box of real estate investing and making it accessible for anybody.
Nice.
And so that's really where we got our start. This was 6, 7 years ago now. And my
Nice.
business partner, Julie, and I created our company, and this is what we focus on now. I've sold off all my rental properties. And so now we're focused strictly on syndications. And personally, I only invest
Amazing.
passively now.
Yeah, amazing. I love the full circle of it, starting with
Mhm.
teaching and especially working with underserved communities. I went to school in DC at George Washington.
Ah, yes.
I worked at a kindergarten in Southwest. I remember starting that as well. And I love what you said about how it is about teaching other people. You're not selling, you're
Hmm.
teaching
Hmm.
and sharing the resources and knowledge, because once someone has that understanding, the deep understanding, the fundamentals, and a mentor, someone that can guide them, it clicks for them themselves. You don't have to sell them on the deal or the strategy. They can figure it out for themselves. And you're right there to then say, great, now you've got it. Here's the deal.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
That's amazing. So Annie, I love your story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. What are you looking for next? What's in the future for you?
Oh boy. Well, at this point, we've been in business about 6 years and we've done about 40 syndications during that time. We got in at a really great time when things were on the up and up. Things are shifting a little bit, so we're learning just as I learned on the rental property
Always
side.
learning,
Now
right?
we're
Always
learning
learning,
on the
always
syndication
teaching.
side. Oh, yes.
Love
And so
that.
we're becoming stronger as syndicators and stronger in our investor relations. So that's a big part of what we're focused on right now is just making sure that we have everything set up internally with our team to make sure that we can best support our investor community. And then looking forward, I think for us, my partner Julie and I, we always talk about how it's not just about real estate for us. We
Mm,
like the real estate, but it's really about what the real estate can do for us in our lives in creating this life by design rather than a life by default where you're
mm,
blinders on and doing the same thing for 40 years, but really creating that life that you want. And
mm.
I think that's where we're headed is showing people how to bring the real estate together with this life that they want and creating that ultimate life by design, whatever that means for them.
Wow, I love that. I think that's really fantastic. And, you've got the experience and you've gone I think that the best teachers and mentors are people who have gone through difficulties and ups and downs and gone 2 steps forward, 10 steps backward. Because again, when you get through that challenge and get to the other side, you're so much more hopeful, right? And you're
Oh,
like, I
yes.
can not only
Hmm.
can I get through something, I can help someone get through something so they don't have to go through it
Yes.
alone. And then the next step of helping those who have the fundamentals now apply it so how they can live their best life. I think that's really brilliant. So tell our listeners, this will all be in the show notes, but if people want to learn more about you, what's the best way for them to reach out and find you?
Absolutely. We're an open book. We love to share. And so the best place to go is our website, goodegginvestments.com. And we have a ton of resources for you there. And our philosophy is always, it doesn't matter if you invest with us or not. At the end of the day, we want this information to be out there. And so that's what we focus it on is just making this accessible to everybody. And so we have a lot of resources for you there. And if anyone listening has specific questions for me, you can always reach out to me at Annie@goodegginvestments.com.
Excellent. And we've mentioned this a few times on the show, talking about sharing resources. And sometimes people can say, wow, why are you giving away for free? Or why are you giving so much away? We're not giving it away when it's knowledge. It's something that is shared and gives back and forth. And I think investments would go better for everyone if everyone's well informed too. We
Oh,
want better
yes.
deals happening on
Yep.
both sides. We
Hmm.
don't want anyone going through losses and that abundance mindset, right?
Yes.
Everyone, there is enough for everyone and everyone can do well and let's help each other do well. I think that's the wave of the future.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Annie. And thank you to our listeners. This is the Failures to Fortunes podcast. I'm your host, Kate Barry, and we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Real Estate Investing Failures to Fortunes podcast. If you enjoyed today's stories and insights, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us. Remember, your journey in real estate is a marathon, not a sprint. Embrace the failures, learn from them, and turn them into your stepping stones to success. I'm Kate Barry, and until next time, keep hustling, stay inspired, and keep turning those failures into fortunes. Happy investing.